data, without input or a plan. Even agency leaders admit flexible work has helped attract top talent, and they fear what will now happen with the retention of those workers. So our proposal on telework did not directly address the governor's proposal because we are unlikely to reach an agreement before his proposed June 1st date. However, the protections we've included in our proposal will address those concerns by requiring them to clearly and convincingly prove that your labor could not be performed without being in the office, and saying that they could not rescind a telework agreement without your consent. We have also included some reimbursement fixes for people who work a significant distance from their permanent work location. As negotiations proceed, we will continue to work at the executive team level, also through your locals and through your agency meet and confer teams. It's going to be a multi-pronged approach to maximize our leverage to get this overturned. We've already had some movement on telework this week at the table. MMB has expressed interest in working on some modifications to the current telework language. This is clearly a direct result of all of your amazing actions. So thank you for showing up. There's more to come in this space, and so please remember to keep your eyes on your email. Also, reach out to your local CAT or exec team for more actions to participate in. These actions are working, guys. So this is a good reminder to never bet against us union members. Right. Moving on to limiting unilateral actions of the employer. So the governor's unilateral RTO decision has shown us once and for all that we cannot trust the employer to not abuse its discretion. So several of our proposals exist specifically to limit that discretion. Some are simple fixes like preventing management from changing our work schedules without our consent, or making sure our interest bids are evaluated before anyone else is allowed to apply. We also included a long proposal intended to protect our members from changes coming from, the increasing use of artificial intelligence. Probably the most sweeping change is to prevent management from making almost any change that isn't listed in the contract without negotiating with the union first. This would be an enormous change and one that would certainly be difficult to achieve, but it's time to stand up against the state. We simply cannot allow them to take away our power. All right, so taking just a second here, if I want to remind you, we will be answering your questions in a few minutes. So if you have a question, drop it in the Q&A button on the bottom of the Zoom bar. You enter your questions there. We'll get back to you. All right, so now let's get back to May proposals here. Worker rights and protections. So many of us on the negotiations team are local stewards, as am I with Local 502. In our steward roles, we deal with many situations between our members and the employer. Doing this work, we see many places where the contract could be improved, like handling of investigations, letters of expectations, overpayment, and FMLA leave. Regarding investments in the workplace, we often wear MAPE buttons and other MAPE gear saying, "The state works because we do." We all know this is more than just a slogan. For 45 years, MAPE members have proudly provided services to Minnesotans. We are unapologetic that we want a fair and competitive compensation for our members. We know that this is a challenging budget year, but our labor isn't just a cost. Our labor is how the state of Minnesota functions. Our labor is how Minnesotans get their services. Our labor is how our waters remain clean, our streets remain safe, and our parks remain green. The state needs to remain competitive so it can continue to attract the talent you see in our union today. To that end, some of our proposals deal with small issues that we would like to see improved. Others handle inequities, especially in terms of exempt employees being forced to work long hours at no additional cost to the state, because why hire if you can overwork us? Lastly, we want to ensure some level of wage stability by incorporating inflation into part of the negotiated across-the-board wage increase. So lastly, I'm going to speak on healthcare. Even though we did not make a healthcare proposal, we wanted management to know how much members value state health insurance benefit. We don't know what the state's proposal will be yet, since that bargaining will start on April 28th. But we wanted MMB to remember MAPE was willing to go on strike 24 years ago to protect our healthcare. And we have no doubt that our members would strongly consider it again. Right now, I'd like to turn the floor over to my negotiations co-chair, Sean McIntyre, and he will talk about some of the proposals MMB offered at the contract opener. Sean?
Thank you, Carolyn. Hello, everybody. Welcome. So let's just get into it. The two biggest takeaways that I had from our last 2 days with management was that they weren't stretching themselves really far with their proposals. 2/3 of their proposals were retreads of their attempts to take away union rights that they've brought in the past. Secondly, I was really concerned about how many of their proposals focused on layoff language. 20 of the proposals that they brought highlighted layoff language, often taking away our collective bargaining rights. We're fighting for a fair contract, but none of this is going to matter as far as the contract goes if we don't have a job to worry about that contract with. And watching how some of that language affected seniority rights and bidding rights and things like that was really a little bit scary. The fact that management is trying to cut back language around our layoff rights when our members are already concerned about how the budget is going to impact them is alarming and frankly unacceptable to us. As we said, they brought 98 proposals, and we definitely don't have time to go over all the takeaways from that. Some of the proposals would allow management to discipline people by taking away a step. I just want to know how people feel about their ability to take away pay from us when we're in a budget crunch. Do folks feel like maybe we'd see more discipline if that were to be an option for them? And as we said, layoffs are obviously a major concern everywhere we go and everyone we talk to right now. That is on the front of their mind. It's really terrible to think that when we're seeing chaos like this from the state and especially from the federal level, all MMB can do is think about how they can make getting through that process easier on them. And that's what a lot of that language was reflective of in their proposals. They're also coming after our medical leave language. Now, with what they're proposing, you would only be allowed one major illness worth of medical leave. So if two disasters struck back to back, the state would like to turn its back on us if, for instance, we were going through a second round of chemo treatment or something like that. And that to us is also unacceptable. Moreover, they want the right, if they decide to withhold your step increases, maybe in an attempt to save money during a budget crunch, even if you've passed your anniversary date and they want to say backsies, give you a bad review and freeze you on your current step. Another thing that we weren't interested in. But all in all, it is an insane and unfair policy the way they plan to propose it to us, and we plan to fight against it. Their entire proposal is intended to save the state money and make their own lives easier with what we're expected to see coming forward in the next few months with this budget. Before we move to the Q&A, I would like everyone to share their story, if they have it, about how funding or contract language would affect you. Please go to the MAPE website, scroll down to the action items, and click on the Share Your Impact form. These stories are really incredibly helpful once we start moving into this phase where we have to actually show stories and tell people how this impacts real Minnesotans and their lives. And this is where we can maybe change some minds and make this a little bit better and fight together. So let's please do that if you can. Again, MAPE.org, scroll down on the action items and click on the Share Your Impact form. If you have other coworkers or colleagues that have stories that you can think of too, maybe forward it to them and ask them to share as well. We know you've given a lot of your information so far. We've seen a bunch of questions in the chat already, and also and we know that there are more questions out there. There is a Q&A button on the bottom of the Zoom link toolbar. Many of you have already used. Please enter your questions there, where Megan, Carolyn, and I will try to do what we can to answer them as best we can in the time that we have. If we don't get to all of them, you guys have our contact information. Reach out to your regional directors, whoever you can, to get stuff to us, and we'll do our due diligence to get back to you. With that, Q&A.
The first question today is from Allison. First question is from Allison, who says she is new to the process and is wondering if we can share how the overall bargaining process works for those of us who are new. How often do you meet with MMB to go back and forth, etc.? Who wants to take that?
I'll take that, sure. So process-wise, every one of our regions for MAPE represented staff across the entire state has elected a negotiator from your region to represent you and the people in that region at the table. So we have an amazing team of negotiators this round that have been meeting for about a year now, just developing strategy and plan. We've been hosting listening sessions around the regions and at locals where people were able to share their ideas for what we wanted to bring as proposals, which was really helpful because that gives us pretty much a good game plan of what people are looking for. So when I do hope that when people saw the proposals that a lot of them weren't too surprising, given that they came from you guys. That being said, we do a lot of planning up until the point of 2 days ago, which is when we first sit down to meet with MMB, who is representing the state in this negotiation cycle, where we as that team then sit down, we give our opening proposals, they share their opening proposals, and we go back and forth a little bit on some clarifying stuff, questions and things like that we've had for each other. And then as this kind of goes forward until we have a contract, hopefully in place, the goal would be by July 1st, that we now sit down every couple of weeks for another day or two, each given every week or so, with MMB to continue that process until we reach an agreement, hopefully. Usually this all culminates in the end of June in what we call push week, where we are with the employer for an entire week, pretty much locked in a building negotiating until we come to terms. But that's kind of the plan and the game plan there. I don't know if there's any more nuance that anyone wants to add, but it's been a long year of getting ready for you guys, and the last 2 days were where we actually got to put the rubber to the road, and it was exhausting and fun and all of that wrapped into one. But we're ready to keep fighting for you guys, especially given that, I think last round we were really lucky in the fact that there was money and we got historic gains from it and we had a great contract. And I think a lot of us do see the stark difference this round as far as just the level of funding go and how much we are going to need to fight for every penny we get.
Next question is, why is MMB so regressive?
I think we probably all three of us want to answer that question. So I will start off, and Carolyn and Sean, feel free to pile on if you'd like to, but it's a really great question. I think the answer that I have for you is I really don't know. It's really frustrating to see how regressive their proposals are. And I said this in the beginning, it is usually really frustrating how regressive their proposals are, but this time it's egregious. It is specific and directed to the current pain and suffering that our members are feeling, and it's exacerbating all of the bad things that are happening right now. They seek to make their jobs easier to make our lives worse. And the whole point of a contract is to have respect and dignity and equity in the workplace. Management's proposals regularly seek to degrade it. And our job, your job, is to make sure that they hear loud and clear that that is unacceptable and we will not let it happen. This is the first time that I've seen our membership disengaged and fired up though. So I think we have the best shot that I've seen in my 5 years in this role of telling them very loudly and very clearly that what they're doing is unacceptable, that this pass from a labor-friendly governor is the biggest punch in the face that I have felt in this role yet, and there's been quite a few. And I mean, we have 1,000 people on this call today. We had thousands of people respond to the communications that we sent out asking for you all to weigh in. We had hundreds of people at our lobby day. We had hundreds of people at the governor's residence. And those are all connected. I know there's some questions on the tie-in for RTO and our contract. We can talk about that too, but I've never seen our membership this fired up and ready to respond to anti-worker, anti-labor, anti-union proposals from a guy who claims that we are 1/3 of the party that represents him. So that I don't know if that really answered your question, but it's unfortunate that they seem to need to take this stance year after year and that it just gets worse.
Yeah, I can't give like a direct answer as to why they're so regressive. But what I do know is if they push, we push back. And we push back harder. And like Megan has stated, you know, and myself too, I've never seen our membership so fired up and like wanting to be engaged and wanting to participate. I'm actually getting like messages on Teams from friends saying, how can I be more involved? And please reach out to your CAT, please reach out to your local executive team and let them know like what's our next step. There's letter writing campaigns that are going to happen. There are like rallies and protests happening just the other day on Capitol campus. Even if it's not your agency, go support your friends and your colleagues. Like, please do it. The way that we need to push back this round is super serious. We all know there's not a lot of money in that budget. So we need to think about these other ways that we can come and come to our employer and say, no more of this.
Another question is, I've heard from someone union involved that the negotiations for the contract are separate than the RTO. Am I wrong to assume that they are one and the same?
I'll start that one again, and you all can fill in my gaps. But the order of operations for language is legislative, so state statute and law, and then our contract, and then policy. So our employer, MMB, cannot put in place a policy that violates our contract, but our contract is separate from policy language, right? So our contract currently gives all of you the right to a meeting with your supervisor when your telework, when your schedule changes. And then it also gives you the right to an appeal if you disagree with that decision. The policy goes beyond that, though. The policy says what the contract doesn't. So what we're trying to do, well, we're trying to do a number of things. We are trying to stop this policy from going into place overall. We are trying to have an impact on what the policy says if it is to go into effect. And we are also trying to negotiate stronger language protections around the right to telework. And those are all interconnected in the effect that it has on you as members and employees of the state's executive branch, but they are different and legally have to be treated as different. So I hope that clears it up. Maybe Sean and Carolyn have a different perspective or take on it.
Yeah, I would just say it's kind of a both and. So that fight is being fought at our executive level with the governor's team and MMB's team. And it's also, we are also trying to negotiate stronger language into our contract that would give us better protections so that this doesn't happen in the future too. I think it is interesting that we sort of forecasted this in a way and we're hit with it just as we were about to faithfully enter into negotiations about it. But yeah, I mean, what timing? But yeah, so I don't know if that answers the question, but it's being fought on just about every level that we can. And I want to really put a shout out to like the most effective level that this can be fought at is at your guys, like membership level, engagement and showing up. So it was incredible to see how many people showed up to the governor's house to protest this with such short notice because of how much it actually impacted so many folks' lives. And in the really small, weird, nuanced ways that this is affecting people. Not that we're being lazy and sitting at home and babysitting our kids, but in the fact that this is actually impacting our schedules. It's impacting how much time we are able to spend with our loved ones away from work. It's clearly rung pretty clear and loud with a lot of people, and we're happy to fight along with you. But the main message there is that people need to show up. People need to get out there and bang that drum as loud as they can, so that management and the state and the governor knows that we're not bluffing. We're representing 18,000 people that are ready to fight back.
Yeah, it's like, don't mess with us. To come in and change a policy with absolutely no input. I mean, it was to the point where commissioners were given the slightest heads up and none of the management knew. And management is pissed as well. So, start working with your meet confer, talk in your locals, talk about how this is disrupting your life. It's important stuff, guys.
Jessica is asking, why are we submitting such a small number of proposals? We've tried this strategy in the past and it hasn't worked. We need to submit as many as MMB. MMB sacrifices a few they never really thought they'd get and expect us to give up one we really want in exchange.
Yeah, let me take that one on briefly. Last round, so 2 years ago, I think was the first time that we tried to bring, or we brought a more condensed set of proposals around topics or categories in the contract. And what that did was it allowed us to very clearly communicate with MMB what our priorities were, and to tell them that we're not here to waste time pretending that this is a zero-sum game. And we've been clear with them all the way through on every contract I've been a part of that we're not going to give a proposal in order to take a proposal for them. That's not how this works. We are here to agree on a contract that makes your lives better and allows them to retain and attract the kind of talent that you all provide. This state works because we do our work. And without us, this thing doesn't survive. And they like to, our politicians like to go and tell us about how great the state of Minnesota is and how wonderfully it compares to all of our neighbors and the rest of the country. And that is because of the work that you all do every day. So the reason that we can attract and retain those people is because in large part of the contract that we provide to protect them from unilateral decision-making. So I think I got off on a riff there a little bit, but I think those focused proposals allow us to very clearly state what our priorities are, what we're here to fight for, what you all are willing to show up and fight for. And they bring a bunch of fluff and crap that they're not considering a priority, that they want to waste time on, because they do see this as a zero-sum game. They think that they can get, weaker layoff rights if they agree to one of our technical changes that changes the date or something like that. And that's not how we bargain. That's not how we've ever bargained. That's not how we're going to bargain this time. We're not going to trade a 1-for-1. We're going to focus on our priorities and we're going to ignore everything else. I mean, we're going to focus on it because we're really mad about it, but we're not going to engage with them on things that are not our priorities or that degrade our rights.
Yeah, to echo that, this isn't horse trading. This is us. It's called a collective bargaining agreement for a reason. And sometimes I think we all need to be reminded of the fact that that entire document, what we call our contract, is agreed upon by us and the employer. If we don't agree with it, we're not going to put it in there. It's not like we're trading one thing for one thing. I think that this time was they brought 89 proposals, and I think that there are very, very few of them that we are even willing to entertain. Just so folks know that, right? We're not here trying to find where we can give up your guys' bargaining rights or your layoff rights or your telework rights. We're not trying to trade that for something smaller or for something that's of equal value. That isn't really how this works.
And Lacey wants to know if there is not likely to be an agreement before June 1st, what are workers expected to do when June 1 hits if we are not able to comply?
We will not have a contract before June 1st. One of the things that our contract relies on is a budget from the legislature. And those folks will not have a budget in time for us to reach a full, even if they have a budget by June 1st, we still need to continue negotiating a contract. In our economic proposals like cost of living and insurance, wait until we know how much money we have to negotiate with before we can reach an agreement. So we will not have an agreement and certainly not a contract in place by June 1st. What that means right now is if this policy goes into effect June 1st and you have schedules determined by your supervisor, you need to use the language in the contract that gives you the right to a meeting with your supervisor about it. Even if it is performative, it's going to cause a lot of problems for people who all of a sudden have 19,000 meetings they have to they have to take. And then if it is unsatisfactory to you, you can appeal that decision. I am fully confident that they have no idea how to handle thousands of appeals to telework provisions. I think we've already seen places like Revenue walking back the RTO by delaying the implementation of it until the fall for non-managerial workers, so all of our bargaining unit. That's the kind of thing I want to continue to see happen, but I also want to be very clear that if you are given a directive at work, you need to comply with it. I, in good conscience, as the president of this union, cannot encourage anyone to violate the contract or an order from their supervisor. It will result in discipline, so do not do that. Use the rights that you have available to you in the contract. Talk to your steward, talk to your coworkers. I think the things that we're doing right now, like the work-ins, are really powerful shows of how many people we have, how miscalculated this policy was, how atrocious the rollout of it was, and how they frankly just cannot accommodate all of us. We're not going to find parking. You know, people are, I think Meredith said it the other day, people are going to be sitting on the floor. So I think those are the powerful things that we can do to still try to stop this from happening, or to get them to actually sit down with us and negotiate. We have requests out to the governor. So there's lots of things that we want to do between now and June 1st. But if we get to June 1st, and this is still the policy that we have in place, you do need to comply. Maliciously, but comply.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that as well. If you have an ADA accommodation, please make sure to submit that so the agency can comply with that request.
Does the MMB proposal of emergency layoffs mean there is no severance and no notice?
Not necessarily. The layoffs at MDH, many of them were to the temporary and classified employees, to student workers, to limited duration appointments. And those folks are gone already. Those folks do not have the same level of protections in our contract that classified, particularly permanent classified employees have. And so they were laid off without notice and without severance. The rest of us who still remain that are going to get layoff notices or already have gotten layoff notices, they have to follow the contract for us. So there's many steps along the way based on their seniority. There's bumping rights, there's class options, all of those things are available. So they have to follow the contract. I will say they are not willing to negotiate any kind of an early retirement incentive with us, like we've been successful indeed with the voc rehab layoffs. So that is particularly unfortunate, but we do have contract language, very dense contract language that dictates how MDH and other agencies have to handle layoffs.
And to be clear, they're making proposals to strip those rights back from us. That's not how our contract reads currently. That's what's concerning about what they're doing. And to be even more clear, the other our sister bargaining units do not have that language in their contract. So our layoff rights are a lot stronger than a lot of the people that we work with. because we bargained for that in the past, and that's a great benefit to our language. They're trying to take it away now, so that they can get rid of us as quickly as they can get rid of anyone else. That I think is frankly what is the most concerning about how much of that language is focused on layoff rights in their proposals, but also the fact that they're just trying to make it easier for them to dispose of us at will.
Yeah, they can't pick and choose.
Adam Camp, our business agent, probably has the most nuance on this.
I did want to add that, yes, I'm one of the business agents that's supporting the team. And in particular, because you had asked about the emergency layoff, the fact is that, yes, the emergency layoff would eliminate the need for notice or severance. In particular, the severance pay would clearly be gone. They have stated that this would be intended for temporary situations, but they don't actually define any length of period for what would cause this to be a temporary situation. And so our biggest concern with this terrible, terrible proposal would be that, yeah, it would be no notice. And if for example, they use the word fiscal exigency, meaning like, oh no, they just ran out of money really suddenly, you wouldn't get notice or severance. The one exception is that you would still be receiving the employer would have the option of providing insurance premiums. So it's a terrible, terrible proposal. I feel comfortable saying that the team is simply not considering it in any way, and I do not expect this to survive.
Another question is approximately when will we have a good budget idea where we will be able to put demands forth for specific numbers of wage increases?
Yeah, great question. We already have a pretty good idea of where the budget's going, and it's not, for everyone that has been paying attention, you know that it's not great news right now. The projected deficits are bad, and so far as the federal impacts to those budgets keep coming in and being calculated, it gets worse. That being said, I do believe that the House and the Senate have to have some sort of level of an idea of where the budget's going to be in a few weeks. But so more to come there. If you guys do pay attention to MAPE's website, we have a really awesome legislative team here that keeps us really abreast of all of what's going on downtown, especially concerning the budgets. And I know that if you guys peek into at the agency level, I can only speak for the Department of Corrections myself, but our legislative team, even with the Department of Corrections, is keeping people pretty updated on what the impacts to these numbers look like, and that they're not good. Like layoffs, our commissioner, for instance, put a video out explaining that layoffs are real and they're coming. So as far as like how that impacts the numbers, MMB, the people that we are sitting down with right now from MMB representing the state, they don't have the numbers either. So we can't responsibly talk to them about economics at all yet, simply because they don't have a budget to work with either. The difference between what the House is proposing, the Senate is proposing, and the governor is proposing is pretty different. So we really don't have a great idea of where we're going to land just yet, I don't think. Again, that being said, the more people can bang this drum as loudly as possible about why our agencies need to be funded as much as possible, and getting out to the streets and being as loud as we can, that's the strongest thing that we have as far as power goes in this bargaining unit.
Do you have the sense that MMB wants to do something drastic regarding healthcare? Just wondering, since you said you had to remind MMB about willing to strike 24 years ago over healthcare.
Yeah, sure. We sit down to as coalition, by the way. So when we negotiate healthcare, we do that. Your negotiations team does that. We have a couple other extra negotiators that are experts in that world, in the healthcare world. And we negotiate as a coalition with all of our other public sector unions. So AFSCME is there, all MMA is there, all the unions that work for the government are right there with us. And we do that together. We sit down, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, on the 28th. Is that right? So on the 28th of this month, we open with them, and that's when we're going to hear what the proposals are for any changes to our healthcare. We'll bring our stuff, they'll bring their stuff, and I'm confident that we will be updating folks similar to this on what the actual impacts of that are. when we hear them. But frankly, this is me here talking. So far, the news has been bad, and we're just getting it in 2-week increments. So I think expect not great news there, but again, this is where we fight back. This is where we show them that we're not going to take it.
What is the union recommendation as far as signing the telework agreements? Our office has said they are due on April 25th.
I'll try to answer this one. I think Megan kind of touched on this one already a little bit. Use the language that we have in our contract to appeal as much as you can, demand those meetings, fill up their inboxes and their schedules with making it tough, right? This sucks, but we didn't make the decision. We're going to comply, and we have language to protect us as much as we can. That being said, we're not asking anyone, and we highly advise people not to comply with a directive from your supervisor. We don't have the protections for you in that regard. Feel free to drag your feet, though.
Dave wants to know, he said, first off, thank you for continuing to fight for us. What options do Minnesota residents have to lobby on our behalf during this process?
That's an awesome question. This is a democracy, so anybody can reach out, and we've seen this. We've seen people who are not our members reach out to their legislators to try to see change to what's happening. We have our own amazing lobbyists, 3 of them at the Capitol, who are shaking all of the couch cushions that are available right now, trying to find all the money available. But anybody in the state of Minnesota can reach out to their legislator and talk about the things that are happening and share with them their concerns. And many of the legislators are sympathetic to our concerns as well. So we saw, I think there's an op-ed out there right now on Telework from somebody who is not a member but is concerned. We've seen some of our politicians come out opposed to what Walz did and the order itself. So I think anybody can and should reach out to their elected representatives to try to see change on anything, but especially on the things that we prioritize.
Yeah, I'd also implore people, like, talk to your neighbors, talk to your people in your community about this too. Like on the subject of RTO, about half of our membership feels that really strongly, and another half of it does not, because it doesn't apply to them. They don't get to experience that benefit, so it's not real to them. That being said, it's not like people are being lazy sitting at home. So have those discussions, explain the nuance of how this is impacting you in your life and the benefits that you've had from it. Changing minds one at a time is how we're going to make this work.
If there were to be a strike regarding negotiations, what would the timing on that be? Would it be during the summer or more towards September?
Carolyn, do you want to take that one?
Woo-hoo-hoo. Well, if we have a budget in place, and it depends, right? Like, we're at the beginning of our biennium. If there is no budget for us, I believe we stop work July 1st. And that's not necessarily a negotiations thing, that's a state thing. As far as us, I don't have the process in mind of where we are at. Megan,
So when we come, the goal for MMB, the state, and us as negotiators and MAPE as members is to have a contract in place by July 1st. Although that's not the budget, and the budget is separate than that. The budget is one thing. That's what funds our contract. That's what funds all of our agencies. And that's how they know how much money they have to do anything with. Us having a contract in place on the language that we're proposing or that MMB is proposing is a kind of a separate thing. We will negotiate that in good faith. Typically during push week, which is the end of June, is when we hope by the end of that process to have a concrete plan in place and a tentative agreement in place. That being said, you guys, membership votes on this, so it's not like the negotiators are in a secret room somewhere making deals that you guys don't know about. We come up with a deal, we send it to you guys, you say if it's good or bad. We can give you our input, we can give you our advice, but that's about it. Membership makes the decision on that. timeline wise, as far as how that might impact people in their lives, that's another thing that we try to be really strategic about, so that it is hurting us less and hurting the state more. So we can get into the nuance of that more, but I would maybe stay tuned and pay attention to see if there's any strike education trainings coming up that would be really helpful for people to learn about what that process looks like, how it's going to impact you, and just like timing, all of it. That would be a really good thing to pay attention to and look out for. We did those last cycle, and I think they were really informative and helpful for folks.
Just so the timeline in an usual year, just in case it's helpful to anybody, and again, this is assuming that all things are normal, and they very much are not in any way. So in a normal budget year, the legislature would have a budget in June-ish. We sit down for what we call push week, which is just a final and full week of bargaining with the state, where we hope to come out of that week with a tentative agreement, which means our negotiations team, informed by you all, has agreed with MMB's negotiations proposals, informed by the governor, right? So our membership and the governor's team are coming to an agreement on what we have negotiated. And that's the end of June. What we do after that is we have a board meeting immediately, and the board of directors approves this tentative agreement to go out for a vote of our members. Obviously, if the board doesn't agree to that, then we go back to the bargaining table, but the board has agreed to send it out to members for a vote. And then we have about a month of time, maybe a little bit more, where your regional negotiators will go to local meetings and share the details of the tentative agreement with all of you. At the end of that, when you're all fully informed, we send out a link from Big Pulse that is just one simple question. Here's the tentative agreement. Do you agree with this contract? And therefore your yes vote is a vote to ratify, which means put it in place. Or do you not approve this contract, and are you authoring a strike? It's only those two. So if you vote no, you are authorizing a strike. It's really important that you understand the vote that you are casting. And that vote will come to you probably at the end of July, maybe the beginning of August, sometime in the very late summer, early fall. And that is the point at which we can, again, decide to strike. If more than 50% of you say, no, this is not a good contract, that does not necessarily mean we're going to strike, but it authorizes us to go back to our employer and say, we have 18,000 people who said this is not good enough, do better. And then they can, or we strike. And then the strike lasts as long as it takes for us to get a satisfactory agreement, then we start the process over. We reach a tentative agreement with the state of Minnesota, we send it out for a vote of our members vote either yes or no, right? Rinse and repeat. So we're looking at late summer, early fall, for when we bring you all in to weigh in on what we've been able to squeeze out of our employer.
Can you clarify how many of the 80 MMB proposals are meaningful changes versus things like updating links or the year, things like that?
Kind of, but I want to be clear that whatever answer we give, that meaningful or substantive proposals does not mean that they are satisfactory proposals or ones that we will in any way entertain. At the end of the day, maybe Sean and Carolyn can give more details on this, but at the end of the day yesterday, which was 2 full days of bargaining with MMB, we gave them a full pass on their proposals, which meant we were telling them how we felt about their proposals. And I was very clear with them that there were a handful, maybe 5 or 10, that we wanted to talk with them about more. We wanted to get some more answers on. We wanted to engage with them and find out where we were coming from. And there were more than half of those proposals in the category that we call absolutely unacceptable and indefensible. And then there were a small other ones that were like technical changes that we could talk about. So out of their 80, I don't want to give like a hard number to it, but the vast majority of those proposals are offensive, deeply concerning, anti-worker. Sean, Carolyn, do you want to give specifics?
Yeah, I mean, really just reiterating, the bulk of their proposals were honestly offensive for us to hear. They were asking for us to basically concede your guys' rights, which is not going to happen. they used, I'll share this, they used their own language or their own argument at one point about how hard they had worked to bargain over the years for certain issues and that they weren't willing to back away, as if we haven't done the same thing. And we know that the decks are stacked against us far more than they are against the state in this fight. So we're not backing down. We're not going to give them an inch. Especially when the stuff that they're asking for is going to hurt people, not just your pocketbooks or things like that, but just send you packing with your bags and don't let the door hit you on the way out. That's not okay for us. If they are going to get rid of people, we're going to make sure that they do it with the care that we've bargained for.
Yeah, I'll give you guys like a little peek inside of the room. Is that MAPE presented a package and actually emailed a document with that package to management. They did not do the same. They just gave us verbals, up or downs, yes, we're interested, no, we're not interested, and then essentially refused to put it in a document, a professional document, and send it over to the union for consideration. So that's how much they care.
Mike wants to know what member actions support your negotiations the most. You mentioned sharing our stories, but what else?
Showing up. When you get these town halls, you guys are showing up and you're getting informed. You're hearing about what we've been up to, what we're doing, the conversations we're having. Show up to these. That way, when you're at the water cooler or whatever, whenever you're talking to people, you can keep spreading these messages. I'm a firm believer that if you are not organizing all the time, you're not doing it right. So make sure you're having these conversations, not just with your coworkers, but with your friends, with your bosses, with whoever.
Get in front of
You
management.
can do if you guys are not already, join as a member. Then your voice is really heard. To what Megan said, when it comes time to actually vote something up or down, that's when your membership really counts, and your vote is literally your say. So I think Ashley just dropped in the chat there where you can share your impact and do that. And yeah, just get involved. Keep showing up. Keep being a loud vocal supporter of what we're doing.
Another question is, you mentioned that management was surprised and angered by the RTO as well. Does MAPE have any sort of coordination or support from MMA or AFSCME when undergoing MAPE contract negotiations?
Short answer is yes. We bargain our healthcare in coalition with all the other unions. I personally am in close contact with AFSCME's leadership on RTO. And I've been really pleased at how coordinated we've been just between MAPE and AFSCME. And together we represent 40,000 people in the executive branch, which is the overwhelming majority. And it has been really powerful to see places where people who do not telework and never could telework because they're providing direct care to people are standing in solidarity with people because of the unilateral decision making. That's where we have found the solidarity. And on so many things that could be divisive for us, right? Or maybe our politicians are relying on them to be divisive for us. We've found increased solidarity. And I think AFSCME is a good example of that because they have way more of their membership than we do, cannot telework because of the nature of their jobs. But they're coming out swinging just as hard as we are. That said, they are their own bargaining units, and they can make choices that either align with us or don't align with us, and we can do the same. But I think more than ever in this round of bargaining, we are aligned across the bargaining units in what it means to stand up to the chaos that we're experiencing, both at a federal level and a state level. So that's my answer.
Yeah, well, our contract opening, we had events going where people could show up and kind of cheer us on. AFSCME bargained, they opened a week before us. We had a bunch of our people, MAPE folks showing up to support them, and they had a bunch of people at our openers to support us. When we were at the governor's house for the RTO thing, there was a bunch of MAPE people there throwing MAPE shirts on, or AFSCME people, throwing MAPE shirts on and just jumping in line with us and doing the whole thing. It was fun to see. I think people are really getting organized more on an organic level, more than they ever have, that I've seen anyway, or in a long time. That's really cool to see. A lot of us work side by side with AFSCME staff. A lot of us work side by side with MMA staff. We do the same work. We work in the same places, and the same things affect us. So if we're having those conversations a lot more organically in the workplace, the AFSCME leadership, the MMA leadership, they're all going to hear that too. So we can all serve our part in making sure that we're coordinating a lot better together.
Okay, final question. How much has the membership increased in the last 1 to 2 months?
1 to 2 months, goodness. Well, so we only have 3 minutes left, so I'll try to answer the question as best I can and then close us out. I'll going all the way back to 2020 because I saw a question about that too. 2020 we had about 15,000 members, a little bit more. Today we have 18,500. In just the first 2 days after the RTO, we had about 200 member applications, a little bit more. I don't know what the number is now, but they were coming in so fast that our operations staff felt like they weren't making any progress on the list because they would get a few processed and then a few more would come in. So it's a good problem to have. Our membership is growing very rapidly in a really exciting way. And, you know, it's definitely about bringing new members into this thing that we call a union, but it's also about the engagement of the people that are already here. And you all have been doing amazing. There's always, you know, the next step that you can take. I think many of our members have experienced that next step over the last couple of months. So before we close, I want to leave you with 3 main things that I've been thinking about through this process, is that you all are so powerful on your own, but so much more so together. We are not passive observers in this process. We never were, and we definitely are not now. And the last thing is that we are not going to sit back while the protections that we have secured are rolled back and our voices are ignored. So over the next couple of months, you're going to see more actions. You're going to see more organizing. You're going to see more pressure on MMB and the governor to change course. If we see management doubling down on takebacks, especially on healthcare, we're not going to shy away from escalating. We've done some of that already. I do want to be clear that a strike is not our goal. Our goal is a fair contract. But if our employer forces that choice, we will be ready. And I know you all will be too. We need all of you in this though. Solidarity is more than just a slogan. It is an action, it is a verb. So when your contract action team calls you, please answer that call. You can share your story with us. You can join the actions and show the power that we do have in 18,000 people. I do want to say we have about 250 unanswered questions, and we're not going to be able to get to them all today. You can reach out to your negotiations representative with anything that's still on your mind. Feel free to reach out to me at mdayton@mape.org. Sean and Carolyn, our wonderful co-chairs, reach out to them as well. I really see this as a defining moment for our union and for public service in Minnesota. These negotiations that we are entering in will determine whether or not our agencies can retain the talent that they have, whether the services that we deliver can stay strong, and whether the people who keep this state running through crisis after crisis are finally treated with the dignity that we've earned. So right at 1 o'clock, thank you so much for being here and thank you for being part of this fight.
Thanks, everybody.